Hola, familia, and welcome to episode 14 of Fire and Butterflies, where vulnerability meets authenticity, where courage meets love, and where fire meets butterflies. And my name is Comadre Cristal, and I am your host of this amazing podcast. And this episode is very special to me for various reasons. One, this episode is an episode I'm really going to dedicate to my kiddos and really talk about how they impacted my life in a very positive way. Alongside that, I'm also going to be sharing a lot of my own vulnerability in regards to the challenges I am now facing as a single parent in this um, economy, in this day of age. Yes, so that's what this episode's going to be about. Yeah, take a moment and come with an open heart and open mind as I share a little bit of my story. So, I want to start off with when I was a child. Ever since I was a little girl, I knew that I didn't want to be a biological parent. I don't know why. I've had a lot of people ask me. I don't know. Like I just knew since I was a little girl, I didn't want to have kids. I didn't want to, quite honestly, I didn't want to bring more people into this earth when I felt like there was already more than enough. However, the one thing I always did say was I wanted to adopt. I remember when we would go to Mexico, I would see a lot of children in poverty and begging for money, working for money. And I don't know, there was just something that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help them. So instead of bringing more people into this earth, I wanted to help the ones that were already here. That was always my mission since I was a little girl. And I never really truly understood that. And to be quite honest, I still don't understand it. And I'm now 35. So maybe I'll discover it as I talk about this into this episode today. So I knew that since I was a child. And after, adulthood came in, I I enjoyed my early 20s. I was off to college. I had a good time. I for sure always made sure not to get pregnant. I didn't want to have kids. Of course, there were plenty of scares throughout my 20s, just like any typical promiscuous person that uses that as a coping mechanism. That was my one of my coping mechanisms. So when I met my now ex-husband, I knew that with him there was something different. He is, not was, he is a very different kind of man. And I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. And we, and the beauty was that we both knew we also didn't want to have biological kids. So there was always that agreement that we both had. However, I don't know if we really sat down to really talk about having kids in general. I think I can't speak for him, nor am I going to speak for him, but I know for me, I think the pressures of living in a society of like that pushes family, especially living in a culture, being a firstborn Mexican woman, for me, like there was this pressure of like my womanhood was defined if I had children or not. Again, I'm not speaking for the Mexican culture in general, and I'm not speaking for everyone out there. I'm speaking for my experience. So when we got married, it kind of felt like the natural step would be to start a family. And when we talked about it, we knew adoption was one of the routes. We just didn't know, we, but we didn't I don't think we really sat down to talk about the challenges of parenthood, especially with the stuff he was going through, the stuff I was going through. And what I mean by stuff, I mean the generational trauma. To be quite honest, it's generational trauma. I don't know if a lot of people actually really think about the generational trauma that they have when they're thinking about starting a family. I was one of those. That was that was one of the things I thought about a lot. And it was something that I remember also saying as I was a child was I didn't want to be the kind of parent my parents were. I knew that I wanted to break the cycles of violence. I wanted to break the generational cycles that I had been brought into. I knew that I didn't want, I wanted it to end with me. So that kind of also pushed me into not wanting to have biological kids because I mean, the way I thought of it was, well, the best way to break my generational trauma is for me not to have children. There goes my generation. Cut. um, and I don't know. Again, I'm not speaking for my ex-husband, but I don't know what his reasonings were. Um, well, actually, no. I know some of his reasonings, but that's his story. So I won't be sharing it. But I do know that we both agreed that biological kids was not going to be our route. So we chose adoption. And when we looked into adoption, it was interesting experience. We looked into private adoption. We looked at adoption from another country, and yeah, I'm not going to go deep into that because there's just a lot there. I have a lots of mixed feelings about adoptions there. And again, I am not saying it's wrong, but I'm also not saying it's right. It is something to be very mindful about and to really think about if it's something that anyone ever wants to do. It wasn't for me and definitely wasn't for my ex-husband. We both agreed that private adoption was not the route we were going to take. And quite honestly, it's very expensive and it just doesn't make sense. So, anyways, so we both were working in the social services field. We both were aware of the need of foster parents in our area. And so we decided to go through the foster to adopt route, which for many of you, depending where what part of the country or what part of the world you're listening to, foster to adopt really means that we become foster parents. So this is being in being a part of the system that is has been made in this country to help children who are removed from their homes. They are put into a foster care system, and this system is really made to support the families and there is an encouragement of reunification. um Again, there's lots that you can do your research on. There's horror stories, but there's also success stories. It all depends on what you're looking for. I knew that there was a huge need. Hello, working in the field for so long that I had been working in, I knew that there was a need of our foster care system. I also knew that our system is broken, and I was hopeful that regardless, there was this faith that I had that it was going to work out the way it needed to for us. So we went through that route. We decided to work through an agency instead of going directly through the county. We chose to work with an agency to help us get placed with any child in the system. And of course, in the beginning, they do encourage you to have kind of, they ask you to be honest and they ask you to put in, I don't want to say like your list of what you're wanting, but you can, like, you could put in a request. Like, we want only a boy, we want only a girl, we want only this age range, and blah, blah, blah. And so, just like everyone, we wanted a baby. We wanted a baby. We didn't have a preference if it was a boy or girl. We just wanted a younger child. And that's what everyone else wants as well. Now, why didn't I want a teenager? I didn't want a teenager because I wasn't even, I was not a parent. My ex-husband wasn't a parent. We were never parents. So to be put into teenagers, it was for me like a very scary thought. of like, I don't even know how to be a parent to a baby. How the heck am I going to be a parent to a teenager? Um, and so we definitely knew that we couldn't, not that we did not want an older kid. I don't think we were mentally prepared for an older kid. In hindsight, I'm glad we didn't ask for an older kid because I think it would have been very challenging for us, on top of already being challenging with the kids that we did get placed with. We did agree one child. After we got approved, it was actually, let me backtrack a little bit because I want to share a little bit of the journey of getting approved and what that looked like for me and how that pushed me into this healing journey that I'm on today. So, when we were going through the process, we had to do psych evaluations. We had to do we had to meet with social workers and answer all these questions. Like they really wanted, like they did their due diligence to make sure we were fit to be foster parents. Now I understand why, because it definitely is challenging in its way. I think parenting is challenging no matter what, if it's foster or not. Um, and I remember one of the evaluations we had to do was we filled out a survey, and the survey would ask us questions about our upbringing. It asked questions about our if we grew up with a parent, a one household parent, a like a two parent household. Um, and then if it depending on how we grew up, the personalities of our parents, and it like literally was a very in-depth assessment. This was for me the pivotal point, I would say, for my journey, because while I was doing the assessment, I remember looking at the assessment to review my answers, and I was looking at the questions that were asking me about my dad and the questions that were asking me about my mom. And I remember looking at that and saying, holy shit, I am just like my mom and I am just like my dad. No, no, I can't do this. I am not ready to be a mom, is literally what I remember saying to myself. Because again, I had promised myself a long time ago that I was going to break the generational trauma of my family. And I didn't realize that I technically wasn't breaking it, I was repeating it. And I didn't know how I could bring in a child into this house when I was repeating the generational trauma. And that scared me. And that left me very unsure of how to handle it. Um the the thing is, and maybe this is something that I should be able to give myself a lot of credit for, is the fact that I had an awareness of that. Because I remember the social worker was like, well, you have an awareness and that's a good thing. And I'm like, you're right. But what do I do with this awareness? Because there's a difference between having an awareness of things and then actually creating an action plan in regards to fixing that awareness. And I sat with this awareness of, okay, what does this mean? What does it mean that I want to break generational trauma and yet I am in the same repeating cycle that I had promised myself as a child I would never be in? And I want to emphasize something real quick, and this is a side note. I was not in the violent cycle. Thankfully, that is one of the cycles I have been very proud of to be working against breaking, was the generational trauma when it came to domestic violence. Um, I was thankfully, my ex-husband was a very healthy man when it came to that. We had healthy communication styles. Like we were not violent towards each other. He wasn't violent towards me and I was not violent towards him. The generational trauma that I had to break was the codependency, was that part of me wanting to have this control over things. And this need of codependency. For those of you who don't know what codependency is, the best way I could describe it is this need of, if you ever catch yourself wondering about how everyone else is doing before you catch yourself wondering about how you are doing, that's codependency. And that was me. I wanted to make sure that everyone else was taken care of. I needed to make sure that everything was good in my house. And that way I could feel comfortable and I could feel safe. That was part of my generational trauma, because that's a cycle that's really encouraged a lot in it, what was encouraged in my household. In order for me to feel safe and secure, I had to have everything in tip top shape or in order. And so that was my codependency. And I saw that that's how I was like my mom, repeating that same cycle. Um, and I was like my dad by not really maturing enough and wanting to make the changes. And so, and I was also I had an unhealthy relationship with drinking. Not necessarily me being the drinker. I had an unhealthy relationship with people in general who were drinking. If they identified as alcoholics or they didn't, that's up to them. But it caused a lot of discomfort for me. And it was a very unhealthy relationship I had, because even with, and my like I didn't like anyone drinking around me. I didn't show it, but I could feel it in my body. Anytime someone would drink a glass of wine or someone would drink a bottle of beer or a can of beer, like I just felt it. Like I would just like contract, like I would just go in within, because I felt unsafe. No, again, people were not violent when they did, but I felt it in my body. So that was another sign that I was repeating the same cycles. So one of the things that my therapist had recommended, because I have been in and out of therapy for forever, and I had this conversation with my therapist of like, okay, well, how, like, am I really ready to be a parent? I don't think I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. Um, and they encouraged me to attend a 12-step recovery program. This was not the first time I had been encouraged to start going to a 12-step recovery program. Um, but this time was different. This time was different because, again, the social workers had said, okay, you guys are ready to be placed with kids and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, are you sure? Like, are you sure this is a good idea? Um, and my relationship with alcohol by that point was getting very, very unhealthy. I was becoming very obsessive with when it came to watching other people drinking and counting their drinks. And it was just, it wasn't healthy for me. And so I said, you know what? Let's go. Let's go to a 12-step recovery program. The one I chose was Al-Anon. Um, and I started going to meetings. This was also like right during the pandemic. So I wasn't going to in-person ones, I was going to virtual ones. And so it actually kind of made it nice, because there was this like, I don't know, like it just, it was a different kind of feel. I have gone to in-person ones, definitely very different feeling than from a virtual one. But if whatever, if you hear this message, if you have been thinking about it, check out whichever one feels right for you. Anyways, how to just put that little night side note there. So I started going to my 12-step recovery program. And I remember, I even before I started going to recovery program, I was already giving myself these expectations of, I'm going to be the best person in a recovery program. I'm going to finish all the 12 steps right away. Like I'm going to be ready to be a mom after this. And little did I know that there's a lot of work when it comes to recovery programs. It's not as easy as I'm just gonna go and do my steps and then be done with it. I get to graduate. Um, but you know what happened was I started going to meetings. I really started to take to heart what I was listening to, what I was hearing. Um, my relationship with alcohol was actually not getting better though. It was getting worse. And that kind of scared me because again, I didn't know when we were going to get placed with kids. I didn't know what was going to happen and I was just like but I got to do better. I got to try. So I did. I did everything by the book. I got a sponsor, started working my steps, and we got placed with two beautiful kids in in the beginning of 2022. And holy shit. I don't think my 12-step recovery program prepared me for it. However, what my 12-step recovery program did prepare me for was the coping skills that I needed during this huge transition in my life. My ex-husband and I became parents overnight. It literally was overnight. One day, the agency's calling us saying that there's these two kids. The next day, we're picking them up from the shelter and bringing them home. That's how fast it happened. And it was, gosh, it just so many emotions at once. Like there's this excitement and happiness because my ex-husband and I, by this point, we had been approved for almost half a year, and we were just so excited. Like finally, it's happening. Now, mind you, yes, we originally wanted a baby. But we agreed that maybe raise the age. It's okay to raise the age. I mean, again, there's so many kids in our system that need parents and we didn't we just we wanted to help. So we did. We increased the age and we when we purchased our home, we purchased a home for 3 bedrooms. And so we figured, you know what, we can also increase it to 2 kids because there's also a lot of siblings in the foster care system. And if they cannot find parents that can take sibling sets, the siblings get separated. And that's so heartbreaking to hear. So we agreed, okay, let's increase our number from 1 kid to 2 kids and let's increase the age. And so we did and here we go. 2 kids in our lives. For the privacy of my kids, I will not be naming them. Just because again, they still are in the foster care system and I do want to respect their privacy. So I will not be sharing about the details of them. I will not be sharing their story. This is all about me and my lessons that I have learned as a mom. However, I do need to name them something because I can't just say the kid and my kid, this kid, that kid. So I currently have a 10-year-old beautiful, vivacious child who is just spunky and quick-witted and clever and biggest heart in the world. And so I'm going to name this kid Elle because they love Stranger Things and they love the character Elle. So my 10-year-old is named Elle. And my 4-year-old, she is, oh man, she's a wild firecracker. And she is definitely one that walks to the beat of her own drum. And I'm going to name her Princess because she loves princesses, everything princesses. So she's Princess. So Elle and Princess came into our house when they were at that point 8 and 2. So we became parents overnight to an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old. Also, side note that is something important to be all aware. My ex-husband had just gone through a huge loss of his a family member in his life a month prior to us getting the kids. So he was going through his own grieving process, and I was then split into I tried splitting myself into multiple parts, a part to support my ex-husband, a part to support these two beautiful kids, a part of me to support the household. I didn't stop working, so I a part of me to support the agency I was working for. And I kind of didn't have any more room left to take care and support myself. So it got really hard for me. Becoming a parent overnight, regardless of when it becomes, becoming a parent is hard, very hard. It's like one day, all you got to do is worry about yourself, your partner, your household. Next thing you know, you have to also now worry about another human being. But it's different because this human being depends on you. This human being needs you. Talk about pressure. Talk about really scary pressure. Um, and so yes, Elle and Princess were in our lives and they had their own traumas. There was a lot that they had to overcome. And I was doing the best I could at that time. Within a few months, I was having a nervous breakdown. Within a few months of having these two beautiful souls in our lives, I was losing my shit. Honestly, that's the best way to put it. I was losing it. Um, Nothing because of what they were doing, nothing because of what my ex-husband was doing, nothing because of anything. It was just me because I was so deep in this need to be perfect. I was so deep in this need of perfection, so deep in the need to control everything. Um, it was very unhealthy for me, very unhealthy. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't taking care of myself. I I just felt like a zombie, to be quite honest with all of you. I felt like there was mornings I would wake up and I resented my life. I resented my ex-husband. I resented the kids. I even resented my cats. There was just so much anger I had. And the thing is, it wasn't towards them. It was anger towards myself because I just kept telling myself, Crystal, what the hell are you doing? You're right back in the same thing. Like here you are doing these things. And I was just being really mean to myself. And unfortunately, my marriage was the one that was honestly like suffering the consequences. The kids, like I was very adamant to not take it out on the kids. Well, I tried really hard not to take it out on the kids. Again, we're doing the best. I never took it out on the kids. But energy doesn't lie. And the energy you put out towards things or beings or situations, that's felt. And I definitely do feel that a lot of this negative energy I was putting out towards my ex-husband and the kids. And I remember one day I was crying and I I need I cried and I was talking to my ex-husband, sharing with him how I was feeling. And he what he told me kind of didn't help me. It just made matters worse. However, it was what I needed to hear because I remember there was that like reminder at that moment of here I am complaining and crying about my life, but what am I doing about it? Like I need help because I cannot keep living like this. So I did. The next day I reached out to my mental health provider and was like, I need help. I need to go back to therapy. I need to do something. I need something because I am losing it. And I don't want to hurt. I don't want to hurt myself and I don't want to hurt anyone in this house. Thankfully, my pleas for help were heard and I did get set up with a therapist. And I also got set up with a postpartum depression mommy group. Now, that was an interesting part for me because I had always been under the impression that postpartum depression only occurs when a mom gives birth to a child and, the baby blues. However, I didn't know that you could be diagnosed with that regardless of you have the child or not, because postpartum depression doesn't necessarily have to, it is hormonal. It is definitely caused by hormones, but my hormones had been changing because I was losing sleep, because I was not taking care of myself, because I now, like, my body knew that I was becoming a mom. Because at night when Princess would wake up crying from night terrors, I was the one waking up. And trust me, this is a big deal for me because I used to be a very heavy sleeper. My family always used to joke around that if a tornado would go by or there was an earthquake, I would sleep through it because that's how heavy of a sleeper I was. But when I had the kids, it's like I could hear everything in the house. It was so weird for me, so different. So I was not sleeping. It was really bad time in my life. And so I started attending this postpartum depression mommy group, and I learned a lot. I learned, one, the beauty of that was that a lot of moms go through this in the in all stages of motherhood. It doesn't matter if they just had a baby. It doesn't matter if they've had multiple babies. It doesn't matter if they didn't even have a baby. Like, postpartum depression really follows a lot of people. And the resiliency that I would witness was beautiful. And the advice that each other, like everyone would give each other. And there was never this judgment, as moms would share their fears or share their emotions or feelings. There was never any judgment. It almost felt like everyone understood. It's like all the moms, we all connected, understanding each other. It was a very beautiful experience for me, and I gained a lot from it. And one of the takeaways, and I always encourage this to anyone who's struggling with parenting and disciplining a child, 1, 2, 3 Magic was the book that was recommended to me because I was really struggling in how to discipline. Because that's the thing, I also didn't know how to discipline. I grew up in a household that discipline was violence. And I didn't want to be violent. I didn't want to spank my kids. I didn't want to pull the belt and hit my kids. One, I didn't want to do that. And two, as a foster parent, that's not okay. So, so this is the part, like, when if you're not taught how to discipline a child, you don't know how to discipline. And so I was so grateful when one of the moms in the group recommended this book to me, because I seriously had no idea how to discipline these two beautiful kids. Um, I didn't. And so I read the book, and it truly, this book changed my relationship with the kids. I followed it. I went with it. I followed the structure of 1, 2, 3. It truly is magic. um, so I was doing the best I could at that time. A few months later, my marriage still was taking a toll. Um, Again, not sharing my ex-husband's experience because that's his story. However, I can share that he was struggling. He was struggling a lot with the loss that he had experienced at the end of the year. He was struggling with the changes of everything. Um, and it didn't help that I was um hounding him and always like on top of him. I can imagine I was not I can't imagine. I know. I know that I was not an easy person to live with during that time. And I've had conversations with my ex-husband. I've made my amends, and now we're in a different place, but during that time I was not honestly, I don't think I wouldn't want to, but I would not have wanted to be married to myself, to be very honest with you. I was not a very pleasant person to be around during that first year of having the kids in our household. Um And so our marriage was definitely taking a toll. However, we didn't want to give up. We were trying to do the best we could again. We were doing couples therapy. We were, trying to do date night. We were trying to be very proactive. However, my my fault in any of it was that I didn't think I had the problem. I didn't think that there was anything wrong that I was doing. It was everyone else. And and that's kind of annoying, to be honest with you. To be that to be the other person on the other side, it's annoying. And so I can see how I annoyed my ex-husband, and I annoyed um him with my I'm perfect kind of mentality. And you're the one with the problem, not me. Yeah, that's not healthy. But again, this is my story. So I remember that the marriage was just getting harder. I w- my ex-husband and I were getting to a place where we just couldn't agree. Honestly, I don't think he liked me anymore. I didn't like him anymore. Eh, we were trying to keep it together for the kids. Yeah, it was not healthy. Um, and I talk about this because in one of I've been doing a lot of presentations recently about unlocking your inner comadre program, which is my staple program. But and in talking about it, I share a picture of me with the kids and my ex-husband at a trip we had taken to the beach. And in this picture, I look so unhappy. I mean, I'm smiling, don't get me wrong, but you could just see it. You could see it in my eyes. You could see this woman in this picture trying so hard to keep it together, trying so hard to keep her marriage intact, keep her family intact. But honestly, she was just trying so hard to control everything. And you could see it in this picture. And I talk about this because that at that trip was one of the pivotal points of our marriage, because after the trip, I remember coming home and I remember getting down on my knees, begging God to please help me. Um, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if either I didn't know if either to call the social workers and say, you know what, we can't do this with the kids. Please find another home for them. Or I didn't know if just to call it quits with my ex-husband. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. And so I got down on my knees and I begged and I cried to God, higher power, to my goddess, crying, saying, please help me. I don't know what to do. I don't know if either try really hard and save this marriage. I don't know if try really hard and keep the kids. Like I don't know. Um, please help me. Well, the marriage kept getting worse and worse. By this point, my ex-husband decided to leave the house. He left the house. He would come back after I would call him, crying, begging him, let's work this out. The kids miss you. I miss you. He would come back. We'd be okay for a couple weeks and then he'd leave again. It was very unhealthy. And unfortunately, looking back, I'll own up to it. It wasn't healthy for these kids and the babies. They didn't know what was happening. They just, we never argued in front of them. We I mean, when Matt would leave the house, I wouldn't like I they just, oh, he's going on a trip for work or something. Like they didn't know what was happening. Um, and each time I would just cry and beg God for help. One of the last times he left, I cried again, get down on my knees, begging God, please, is this marriage worth saving? I don't know what to do. A few weeks after that prayer, after that moment of just getting down and being humble and asking God to please guide me, that was my last straw. I had realized that the relationship was not, it just wasn't going to work out. And this back and forth was not healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for him. And it wasn't healthy for the kids. And so, yeah. And there was also some things that I just, it was like my own boundaries had been crossed. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And so I asked my ex-husband to leave the house, and this time for good. And that was really scary. And that was really hard. And that was something that I never in a million years would have imagined I'd be in this place. And I remember feeling this deep sense of regret, this deep sense of remorse, this deep sense of this is not the life I wanted. What the hell? Like I I don't want to be a single mom. I don't want to what is happening? And as I was in this mess and as I was in this place of grief, my kids were the ones that just gave me so much strength. They they would always offer me this like comfort. I don't know, and it's hard to explain, and I genuinely don't know how to put it in words, but let me tell you that my kids were God sent because don't think I know for a fact I would not have had the strength that I needed throughout all of this is if it was not for my kids. And so I realized as one time I was crying and really in this, I just had this realization like, people can call it a spiritual awakening, a download from higher power, a conversation. Like, I don't know what to call it, but I had like this revelation as I was in the midst of my tears and everything of you're not you're not the only single mom in the world. You're not going to be the first, and you're sure as heck are not going to be the last. And you can do it. Like your mom did it. You can do it. And so I was like, damn right. I can do this. Like I can do this. I am not a victim here. I can absolutely do what I have to do to get out of this hole that I was knee deep in. And so that's when I really started to work towards uh, self discovery, work towards loving myself, taking care of myself, and really working towards healing. Because again, I saw myself repeating the same cycle that I had promised myself so long ago not to repeat. And I was just like, nope, that's it. I am going to break this cycle. And so I don't know. I just started being more proactive in my healing journey. I started attending more meetings. I started going to therapy again. I actually started taking antidepressants again for the multiple times in my life. Like I was just like, I need to do something. I cannot stay in my room locked up, crying the whole time, grieving, because these kids need me, and I don't want to. I don't want to lose these two beautiful souls. So I started really working towards empowering myself, taking back my power, and breaking that codependency that I had so deepened into myself my whole life. And something magical started happening. I started to really see how my journey was influencing my kids. I started seeing how I started influencing the way they viewed the world, the way they spoke to each other, the way they even talked about themselves. And it all because of how they would see me, how I interacted with them, how they would see me interact with myself. And just it was just a very beautiful blessing and reminder to witness my growth and witness the growth that they've had. I don't know. It was just something so magical. And that's when it dawned on me, like that's what it is. Like that is what it means to break generational trauma. Breaking generational trauma for me does not mean that I'm not going to have kids. Breaking generational trauma means that I'm healing those parts of me that have been hurt, that have been broken. And in turn, I'm helping heal those people around me who need it as well. I am not just breaking my generational trauma, but I am now empowering and helping my kids break their generational trauma. And it has been such a beautiful um, blessing to experience. The way my kids speak about themselves, the way they show up in this world, and it's a beautiful thing to experience. So I don't know if my kids will ever truly understand how much they have saved my life. You know, in the beginning, I would always get a lot of friends and family telling me, "Oh, you're like these kids are so lucky to have you." Yeah, they are lucky, but I would respond and say, "I'm also the lucky one though." Because if it wasn't for them, I would not have had the strength I needed to get through the divorce. I would not have had the strength to heal my own wounds, my own inner child wounds, my own um, generational wounds. Like they have helped me tremendously through that, and I don't think they will ever understand that. And I love them so much for that. I share all of this though because they are my inspiration. My kiddos are the ones who really push me out of my comfort zone to do better, to want to do better. And they are the ones that remind me that they're the ones who are looking up to me. I am not a perfect mom, nor will I ever be a perfect mom. However, I don't and this is something I always tell them, I don't want them to be perfect either. I allow myself to mess up in front of my kids. I allow myself to own up to my mistakes. Anytime I'm not perfect, aka perfect, I own up to it right away. Tell my kids, I apologize to them constantly. I tell them each time I'm going to do better. Um, and it's a beautiful relationship that I have came to a place where I allow my kids to call me out on my own stuff. And I and that and it's something that's so beautiful to witness because as a child, I trust me. I as a child, I was never allowed to tell my mom that she was messing up. I was never allowed to tell my mom that she was being mean. Um, and I allow my kids to do that. It's the funniest thing. The last week I got really sick, like really sick. And my I was sick, so I was cranky, and I was cranky towards the kids because when you're sick, you don't want no one to talk to you, not even your kids. And I snapped at my kids a couple times, and then I would own up to it and be like, what, mommy's upset right now. Mommy needs her break. Just please don't push my limits. Um, and after I started feeling better, I owned up to it. I went to my kids and I said, you know what, that was not okay. I wasn't feeling well, but that does not make it an excuse for me snapping at you. I'm trying to do better. And my kiddo, Al goes, It's okay. You were cranky. You were crankier than usual. And I laughed. I was like, yes, I was crankier than usual. Thank you for letting me know that I was. And they still proceeded to say, yeah, you were really mean, mom. I'm like, I was really mean. You're right. I'm not gonna deny it. Um, and it doesn't bother me that they call me mean. It doesn't bother me that they tell me that I am messing up because it's true. And that is what I have learned what it means to break generational trauma is to let my kids have a voice because my voice was taken away so long ago. And it's taken me this long to find it. And so I'm really grateful for my kids. Now, I share all of this too because I have a big vision for what I am meant to do in this world. And I am breaking not just my generational trauma, but my I'm helping everyone break their generational trauma because that's what Love Your Now Comadre is all about. It's about helping you find your authenticity, live your life authentically, and in turn, that helps the people around you that you love heal as well. And I've been seeing that with the people I've worked with. For many of you who got to hear the episode with my comadre Michelle, I mean, she's a student, she's a graduate from the program, and I am just so proud to see how much she has taken everything, and she's also breaking her own generational trauma, and it's been beautiful to witness. So I say all of this because not too long ago, I was praying to, as you all know, I pray for everything. I was praying to my goddess, and I was just saying, okay, I want to help more people. I want to reach the people who need me. I don't know who they are. I have an idea, but I don't know how to reach them. So please just help me. And I got a beautiful request a few days later from someone who works in the west side of town. Here in Modesto, it's West Modesto. And the west side is known for its gang violence, its poverty levels, and its family. Definitely, there's a lot of domestic violence in the families. And it's the side of Modesto that has the highest population of the Latinx community. And I was just like, yep, this is all for me. And there's this woman reached out from West Side Modesto. They work in a school. And she reached out to me saying, I would love to collaborate with you. I want to work with you. I want to bring you to the schools so you can facilitate workshops and all these amazing things that you're doing in the community. And I just started crying because I was just like, oh my God, this is what I was praying for. Thank you, God. Thank you. Um, and it was a beautiful conversation that I had with her. We are planning to work together for the next school year because it's summer now, and so definitely not be doing. So in the meantime, I'm preparing and creating these workshops for next school year. I will definitely be bringing in them to the parents because that's what the parents are needing. They put out a survey, and parents are requesting support groups. Parents are requesting workshops to learn about self-love and self-care. Parents are requesting workshops about mental health and how to receive support and how to build on their support system, which is everything that Love Your Now Comadre works on. It literally is God sent. However, this is where I ask all of you amazing listeners for help because this is a nonprofit that reached out to me. They can only do so much. They can facilitate the room, they can facilitate the marketing. However, they cannot facilitate paying for my services. And I'm also a single parent. I cannot do my services free of charge for for this population um, because I need to bring income into my household. And so I am asking all of you to please help this prayer, this dream of mine become a reality. I know I am meant to help these families in this side. and not just this side, but any of the families that I can come in contact with. I want to help more people break the generational trauma. I want to give these people the fire that I had to find within myself, because every time I see that picture that I mentioned earlier, I see how my fire was out. I see how I was so desperate to get out of my life and how I just was crying for help. And the skills I have been using, because I won't say I learned these skills. I didn't learn these skills. These skills that I use in my Unlocking Your Miracle Mother program, they're not new skills I learned. These are skills that I have always known about. I just didn't put them into practice, or I just didn't know how to. And now that I do, my life has changed and I'm seeing the difference, and I want to help other people with this. And I'm asking all of you to please help make this a reality. So in the description, there is the donation button. So please send any sort of donation if you can. Forward this message to anyone that would love to hear this. Or even a sponsor in the area. I don't know. I don't know how to continue keeping the lights on of my business and as a spiritual life coach. But I do know that there's people out there who need my medicine and I have it. And I just ask all of you to please make this happen. I've been fortunate and so blessed that I am breaking my generational trauma and that I am helping to break my kids' generational trauma. I want to help spread this fire to everyone else who needs it and who wants it. And the families in this side of town want it and need it. I just need to know how to help them in a way where it's affordable for them and that it's going to also not drain me energetically and financially. Um, and so that's my plea that I ask for all of you to just help make this happen. I owe my kids everything. And if there's anything I can do to continue helping my kids is to help other families who are struggling with the same thoughts, with the same cycles, with the same frustrations, with the same grief. I just want to help them because I was blessed enough to have an amazing support system around me that helped guide me through it. And now that I can help guide others through it, uh, I know this is what I'm meant to do. So, yes, please help. Please, if you want, if and even if it's not for the families, just help with keeping Love Your Now Comadre going, because I know this. I know today's economy is tough. Trust me, I know. I'm feeling it myself. Um, However, Love Your Now Comadre is making a difference. And the people I have already helped has been phenomenal and it's been transformative and it's been a blessing. So if you can just share, like, follow, subscribe, donate, forward this, whatever it is, in any capacity that you can help, I would truly appreciate it. Because that's how all it takes. It's just one person at a time. And the more we can spread this message of love, the more we can spread this message of fire and butterflies, the more it causes that ripple effect. And that is how we can help become a better society and help raise the vibration of this beautiful, beautiful planet Earth. So thank you all so much. I dedicate this episode to my beautiful kids that without them, I would not be the woman I am today. Without their love, I would not have the strength I needed to get through the darkest times of my life. Without their sassiness, I would not have the ability to just laugh through my mistakes. I love those two so much. And if I can spread what I have helped with them and how they have helped me and spread that to the other families in this world that need it, that's all I ask is just we can do it. We can do it together. So Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Thank you so much for being a loyal listener. Thank you so much for being here with this journey. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I am truly blessed and I am truly grateful, and I count my blessings every day. So thank you all so much for this. And with all of that, I am sending you all so much fire and butterflies. And as always, don't forget, love your now. Bye.